Hi, I'm Julie McNeil. I'm a registered dietitian, and for my Zoom video project, I decided to do something fun, and we're going to make a popcorn cake. But it's not a one-person production. I've mastered this over the last 10 years and discovered that you need 2 people to make the popcorn cake. Otherwise, you end up having a huge mess. So one of my besties, Jennifer Bradley, is also going to be here, and she's my sous chef for today. So the main thing is we will put the recipe up at the very end of this because there's so many recipes online. Feel free to just Google popcorn cake. 15, 20 years ago, couldn't find a recipe for popcorn cake to save my life. But now, over the years, people have discovered the fun of it. It's great for kids' birthday parties. It is great for gluten-free celiac patients. Not so good for diabetics. It is also very high in fiber. So you balance the sugar with the high fiber is my take. And if anyone knows me as a registered dietitian working in continuing care, sometimes it's okay to eat dessert first. So we're going to start. So the main thing is you will need to have about 16 cups of popcorn. Your choice is you can do popcorn on the stove, you can do popcorn through your hot popper, or my favorite, to be all honest, is I just go to the store and I will just buy the Smart Pop or the light popcorn. Don't go with the extra buttery popcorn because when you try to mix your melted marshmallows in with it, it doesn't seal. It doesn't congeal together. So if you are doing this type of popcorn in the bag, have multiple bowls going. Dump it in one bowl and transfer to another because you definitely don't want any seeds in your popcorn cake. You don't want anyone having to visit the dentist after they eat your popcorn cake. So we have popped our 2 to 3 bags of popcorn. We have separated it. You need 2 bowls because it is like making a cake. You need to have multiple bowls. You layer it as you go along. You will need about 1/4 to 1/2 cup of butter. I haven't used marshmallows. For the marshmallows, I often go with the Jiffy Puff. The reason being is that sometimes the Superstore brand or the Save on Food brands, they just don't melt as nice. So Jiffy Puff has been my go-to marshmallows always, as well as butter. So Baysell has all the margarines, they have extra water in it. So when you try to melt it and use your marshmallows, it doesn't conceal, it doesn't mix as nicely. So quite often what I do is I just grab some butter, whether you have it at the neighbor's house, thank you, or whether you have it in your own house. It could be frozen or it could be just in the fridge. You just slightly cut about 1/4 to 1/2 cup at the bottom of your bowl, because this is what you're going to be using to use in the microwave. So when you make Rice Krispie squares, you cut this into a pot, you put this over the stove, you melt it, you add your marshmallows, you melt your marshmallows, and then you can dump your Rice Krispies in. Because the Rice Krispies are small, they have a small surface base. So, but when you're making it popcorn cake, you actually have to do the reverse. You have to melt your marshmallows, and you have to add the melted marshmallows to your popcorn. So what we do, you cut it like this, you go and you dump a bag to a bag and a half of marshmallows to fill up an 8-liter jar, or anything that's big that you can fit in your microwave that's also microwave friendly. Remember, metal, not so friendly in the microwave. So what we do is we have our butter cut at the bottom. You dump your marshmallows on top to fill it all the way up. So I use often a bag to a bag and a half of the marshmallows, so it's nice and puffy. You would take it to your microwave, you would put it on for 2 minutes, and after 2 minutes, you will get this nice bubble effect, where your marshmallows are starting to melt, and at the bottom, they have the melted butter. Benefit, wet, cold ice water helps with anything really sticky. It will keep your utensils clean, it will keep your hands clean. So you take your cold, wet utensil and you mix. And you mix until you get all the butter from the bottom and you brought it right up. So quite often after 2 minutes, every microwave is different, you still will have to put this in for a minute just to keep on getting it nice and completely melted. So it is in the microwave. We did 2 minutes. We took it out. We kept our wet utensils in cold water. We stirred it slowly, as you saw, to get all the butter incorporated. And now I've stuck it back in the microwave for another 1 to 2 minutes. I'm watching carefully because I can see it bubbling up. So when it bubbles up, you know you're good to go. Otherwise, it will overflow like an avalanche in your microwave and you will not be very happy. So as you can see, it is the butter, it's liquidy, it's nice ooey and gooey. So you, like I said, cold water bowl utensils are amazing. You will start in mixing this, and while this is mixing, your sous chef here will pour in. I love the flavor of vanilla. So I know lots of recipes call for maybe 1.5 teaspoons of vanilla. I go for the full tablespoon flavor because I just love the flavor of vanilla. So we dump in our vanilla and we mix it. And as you can see, it's nice and gooey. So you mix it down and it will be very hot. So, you know, quite often you can mix this down. You can let it sit for maybe a couple minutes, stirring in between, but don't let it sit for too long because it will cool rapidly and then you'll have a very hard time mixing your gummies and your popcorn together. So as everyone can see, it's nice, it's gooey. All the marshmallows have melted. And we slowly stir it, just to keep it going, just to make sure that our vanilla has nicely incorporated. And so while that's ready to go, like I said, I often, because it's very hot, I let it sit for a minute or two. And this is the time where you can decide, get your candy together. So often you put, with the 16 cups of popcorn, you usually put 2 cups of candy. For true gluten-free, really severe celiac patients, they cannot have Smarties. Smarties actually are made with wheat flour. So if you're unsure of how severe your celiac patient is, don't put Smarties in. Go for baking M&Ms. And so you have to find the baking M&Ms in the baking section. And the reason you want the baking M&Ms is the shell is harder. And so when it incorporates with the hot marshmallows, it won't melt away. But I know Zane, which is Jen's son, he loves chocolate. So we actually use M&Ms that weren't for baking so that they melted and they made our popcorn cake look semi-chocolate, which we will show you after we're done. So we have our popcorn divided in 2 bowls. We melted our marshmallows and added our vanilla syrup. Jujubes, so we're going with gummy bears. We're going with Smarties because they are my favorite. And for my jujubes, the trick of it, scissors. Don't worry about a knife, take a scissor. Cut so nicely, no gooey, no mess. Your scissors still leave you work afterwards. So we already pre-cut our jujubes. Okay, this is ready to go. Jen's gonna slowly pour it on. I am going to get my wet spoon so I can start mixing it. In the beginning, you want to use a wet spoon, but you will, towards the end, have to use your fingers.
Is that enough?
Yep. So just give it a light toss. And then she will, as you can see, popcorn goes flying. So if you have a dog and popcorn goes flying, you will be their best friend forever. Okay, so at this time, because we did a light coat and now we have poured some more of the marshmallows on, this is the time to start getting your candy in to incorporate it. So gummy bears, handful, just sprinkle it on in. If you are a true fan of candy, this will be your favorite cake ever. Okay, I will start stirring and then Jen will pour more of the marshmallow mix on top. And eventually we will have to add the other popcorn to it. So we'll probably go half this time. Half of the batter, the melted marshmallows. Okay, now it's really gooey. Jen, why don't you sprinkle some of those Smarties in for us? And as you guys can see, it's as if we were making Rice Krispies, but it is with popcorn. Okay, and now we will dump more of our popcorn in. Woo, everywhere. And you just keep on mixing as if you're making cookies or any type of cake. The folding technique is often the best because you don't want to bang down into your popcorn because then you'll crush it. So you do the fold over technique. Okay, more of this. Yep. And then we have our wet spatula, which she will use to scoop out the rest of our marshmallows. And so at this time, because it's a layering effect, I'm going to reach over, I'm going to grab my jujubes, and I'm going to layer my jujubes all in here. And then for good measures, why not throw a few more Smarties? Just because they'll look so pretty. Okay, and I will mix that in. Okay, more popcorn. And then probably the last bit of the marshmallows. And if anything gets too sticky, or if you need to get your hands into it, like I think I'm at the point where I do need to put my hands in it, I'm going to put my hands into the cold water. That way my hands will be able to mix nicely without getting too sticky. And if the marshmallows are still very, very hot, it won't bother my hands as much. So we scrape off our spoon, we put it in our sink, and then we constantly keep on mixing. And so at this time, when you're ready to put it into a pan, you have two choices. You can use your glass square pan, like a Pyrex 9x13, or you can use a bundt pan. Unfortunately, because this contains more marshmallows than an actual popcorn ball recipe, it doesn't form into marshmallow balls very well. As you can see, it's a gooey matrix. The kids, if you have children, they love this part. As long as the marshmallow isn't too hot anymore, this is their favorite part, to get in here, to mix, to throw in more candy if they need to. And then we'll throw the little bit more popcorn in, and that's good. So I just keep on mixing. You're going to have overflow. There's no way to get around this. So hopefully your countertop is big enough to cover all the overflow of popcorn that goes flying around. And so Jen is getting her hands nice and cold and wet too, because when we transfer it into our buttered bundt pan, she will scrape it off my hands. I think we have enough candy in there, or maybe we should throw some more. Throw the last bit of the jujubes in, and a few more Smarties, just to be fun. I mean, it is going to be New Year's Eve tomorrow, so you might as well have a sugary night. Okay, so your bundt pan or your glass Pyrex is all buttered and ready to go, and you just transfer over, and your helper with their wet hands scrapes it off of your hands for you, and they will pat it down as you go. And honestly, this recipe, I have older people like my mom who's 70, and originally when I started to make this 10, 15 years ago, she gave me a weird look, like, why would you do that? Like, that just doesn't sound like a tasty dessert. But once she actually bit into it, it reminded her of, being a kid and making Rice Krispie squares with her parents. And so this recipe came about to be is I had a friend who was a nurse, and often at parties, I would see her snacking on the stuff she would bring because they were gluten-free. So she would often bring jujubes or gummy bears, or she would be having popcorn at the party. So what ended up happening is one day I just decided to see what would happen if I started inventing things. Like I said, 15 years ago, you couldn't find a recipe for popcorn cake online. Now you can find multiple recipes for it, but this was truly derived out of a friend who was gluten-free. She was a nurse, and always at gatherings and that type of stuff, she could never have any of the items. So that is how this popcorn cake came to be. And ever since then, I definitely make it once, if not twice a year. And it is my birthday cake. I am happy to report. I am a candy sweet person by heart. And so this is my true favorite cake. And it is made for me once a year. And if no one makes it for me, I'll make it myself.
Right here.
So as you can see, Jen has worked with her wet hands, putting in the bundt cake. She has started to pat it down each time. You get the gooey hands at the end, and so this is the fun part. You get to lick it, you get to be a kid at heart, and enjoy the flavor of your bundt cake. So, often or not, I let that sit in there for at least an hour or two. It just has to form. It has to create a nice seal, just like we do with Rice Krispie squares. So you clean all your mess up. So I did this one, like I said, more with Smarties than with M&Ms, because the M&Ms, if you don't use the baking M&Ms, they will melt, like this cake. So Zane wanted a melty cake. He wanted chocolate flavor. So what we ended up doing, using traditional M&Ms that melt in with the hot marshmallows. And so that is the end of my popcorn cake. I hope you guys do try it. If not, and you want to have me create it for you, I'd be more than happy to make it for you. So we wish everyone a happy new year, and I will see you guys on January 5th when we start classes again. Bye.